Well, we mentioned Louis Riddick. He's going to have some misses. And another person that, has some misses, has some hits is Chris Collinsworth. He's a good old Chris Collinsworth. He's got
here's a guy.
Now here's a guy. And he showed some love to the Lions. He was on X talking to fans, and he tweeted out some opinions about the Lions. And one of them being, he just was going on rants about teams, and he said, "Okay, start with the Lions. I love first round running back, cornerback Terrion Arnold to go with the Bucks, Carlton Davis. And if DJ Reader is healthy, Aleem McNeil may be unstoppable up front. Really good offseason."
What a dog!
Hey, that's W. Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah, it is. I love to hear that.
He also said this, responding to an Eagles fan. He was sticking up. He was going to war. This Eagles fan said, Terrion will not be good in year one. He's a converted safety who struggled tremendously with mirroring wide receivers. He's a good tackler, but can be beat downfield. Any corner can be beat. I mean, that fun fact. And then he responded to that and says, I will respectfully disagree. Terrion Arnold attacks receivers and recovers when they escape taking angles and cutting them off at the boundaries. Not nearly the athlete Eagles got with Quinyon Mitchell, but it's also the player with Mitchell.
Cooked him. I like Chris. I'm a Chris Collinsworth fan. He's the one that does the slide in too, right, with the chair.
He made you a fan.
I'm a fan of Chris Collinsworth. I think the other I like the Terrion one, fellas. I think we all know what Terrion Arnold's going to be. The other one with the DJ Reader too. That just makes me feel like Brad Holmes just absolutely dominated the offseason when it comes to he just got CB1, CB2. He went and added to the defensive line, and people are starting to see it. National media are starting to be okay, hey, the Detroit, Brad Holmes went out and got dudes on this defense. Yeah, we don't have an edge rusher. We could keep saying it over and over. I could sound like a broken record. They got dudes on this defensive side of the ball now. Mm-hmm. So I think people are starting to usually that are used to hating on the Detroit Lions, and in national media is hey, you guys should stop hating on them because guess what? This is a football team, boys. Welcome.
Yeah, his point about Aleem McNeil is great because we've been saying that on the show a lot. How DJ Reader is going to make him very, very good if he's healthy, which hopefully he will be for majority of the season. But his comment there about Quinyon Mitchell, and I had Quinyon as my number one corner. I think you did too, Boone. I think Mike did too. So I think you were the only one, Lucas, that had Terrion as your number one corner. But I will say this, even as someone, and it wasn't and we can all agree, it was never a big drop off. We thought Quinyon and Terrion were the two, and I had Kool-Aid McKinstry up in there, maybe top five. But he was a top 3-4. I'd put him. Lions didn't end up getting him. The Saints did. But I didn't know Terrion Arnold would be there and Quinyon Mitchell. So the Lions got Terrion. I will say this, though, even from a guy who likes Quinyon Mitchell a lot. I think Chris Collinsworth nails it. He's not the athlete, but guys, athleticism, it helps. But there's corners that are, Richard Sherman, I know people would call him, the zone corner, but he ran a 4.5, didn't he? A 4.6, 4.5, whatever it was. 40 times don't always determine how great you're going to be as a corner. And I know Sauce ran a ridiculous fast 40. And I think it helps with recovering and stuff like that. But I still think Terrion and Quinyon are going to be great corners. So I'm not even going to sit here and I think the Eagles fan was clearly just trying to, hey, we got a better corner than they did. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be the case. I think both of them are going to have really good careers. And to be honest, I learned more about Terrion's mentality and his approach to football, him being a Lion, than I never ever knew. And I actually respect him more because of it, his love for the game and seeing his work ethic. There's stuff I just didn't know about Terrion, the human being, which Brad obviously knew a lot about. That's why he had him as his top corner. But listen, liked Quinyon Mitchell a lot, but Terrion's going to be a damn good corner. So even a converted safety, if you can do that in Nick Saban's system and be very, very good, I think you're going to be fine in the NFL.
Yeah, and a point you did make, the mentality, that was kind of more of the reason that we were so high on Quinyon over Terrion when the draft started, because all those videos came out, him talking about being a Lion and just how much he really loved the game. That's kind of what pushed us, to wanting Quinyon. But these guys were always 1A, 1B in our minds. And then now that we've seen Terrion, obviously we drafted him, he's opened up more and we've learned more about him. We love him more as a person. We've always loved the player, but just more opening up as we've seen, and it's still early. We're just learning more and more about the guy, and it's just making us love him as even more.
Yeah, Chris Collinsworth, he's probably getting ready, just checking out the rosters that were possibly being made for week 1, Lions versus Rams. He's like, oh, God. Wonder who the Lions got on the defensive side of the ball. They still got that Anzarike down at defensive tackle. Let's check it. Oh, DJ Reader. They still got that Vildor, that Sutton out there. Oh, they got Carlton. Now here's a guy, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold. But yeah, I think Chris Collinsworth is on point with it. And as far as what they were saying specifically with Terrion, I mean, if you just simply watch his film against Georgia, mirroring wide receivers is not an issue for him. And I think, Jeff, to your point, if you're a safety that Nick Saban goes, I mean, you're a damn good safety, but you're way too good in coverage to be kept here. Let's put you at corner. And then you excel, and then you are undoubtedly one of the best corners in the draft this year, and then you fall to the 20s and the line straight up in front of the Green Bay Packers to go and get you, and you happen to just be the cornerback 2 now alongside Brian Branch, who's going to be in the safety room, and then you just look at that safety room behind him. Terrion Arnold's in a position where he's going to flourish, so for him to say that he's not going to have success year 1, yeah, he might not be a sauce to your point, Jeff, but he's going to be a damn good player by the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, I want to throw this out there too, because I thought about this when I was like looking over my notes for this segment, and I was like, I wonder if there's a chance, and this is like, I want to know what you guys think. Like, is there a chance Terrion Arnold, and in the chat too, ends up being CB1 by the end of the season over Carlton? And when you're like, this guy, and it goes back to me at least. Like, it goes back to the situation last year with Brian Branch and CJ Gardner-Johnson, to where CJ Gardner-Johnson is a respected safety in the NFL last year. And you bring him in and you're like, oh, this is the guy now. But you get a guy from Alabama, a Nick Saban kid, who, I say it all the time, it's like, you can't keep Brian Branch off the football field. Like, training camp came around, they're like, this kid's too good. Like, and I know how hard it is for a corner in the NFL to come in as a rookie and dominate, but all right, say it does take him some time. When he ends up getting adjusted and his feet wet into the game in the NFL and ends up getting in there and he's getting action on a team that's a contending team and he's playing in meaningful games and he's making plays, I feel like a Terrion guys like a Brian Branch where you're like, this is a kid you can't take off the football field, and he ends up taking over that CB1 spot. And you're like, hey, he just is that much more better and talented than Carlton. Because you got to think about this too. Like, think about the future. Carlton Davis, yeah, he's a great corner in the NFL. He's on we traded for him on a 1-year deal, and the Lions didn't extend him for a reason. Like, there's a reason why they typically, you see some trades. I don't know how often it happens in the NFL, but like in the NBA, you bring in a guy and knowing that he's on a 1-year deal, if you really like him and want him, you give him that contract with the trade. They didn't do that for Carlton Davis. They said, we're going to go draft Terrion Arnold. We're going to bring in a Meek. We're going to bring on this Rakestraw in. Guess what? You have 1 year left of your deal. Battle it out. And I think there's a chance, like, and this isn't a knock at Carlton, but it's more so like a guy from Bama like Terrion. It's like, hey, he might end the season CB1, and then you could tell Carlton, hey, we can give you a little less money because we got this kid.
I know Terrion's good. No, he's a Bama boy. But that boy Carlton Davis from Auburn's pretty damn good too. And I think, to your point, Booner, he's on a 1-year contract. So what does he have to prove? That he's worth that money after this year to sign him? And I just think he's a perfect scheme fit for this Aaron Glenn defense. And I just think he's exactly the prototype of corner that they want, and he can produce right now. With Terrion, I think there's going to be struggles and some hiccups early on, but Booner, I think maybe at the end of the year, they're to a point where it's like, okay, if Justin Jefferson's in motion, let's not convert the whole defense so Carlton Davis has to rush his ass over there. Terrion, take this one. Terrion, if Justin Jefferson lines up on you this time, take him for this rep. I think they could ease him into cornerback 1 type of positions, but year 1 with a cornerback like Carlton Davis and how he plays in Aaron Glenn's scheme, I just don't see it happening year 1. Could I be wrong? Yes, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, the thing that people make this mistake with corners too, like top corners and I got a lot of the great corners. I mean, Patrick Surtain and Sauce Gardner, they ran 4.4 40s. Jalen Ramsey 4.4 40. But then there's other great corners that did not run a 4.4, and that's Jalen Johnson, who Steve Wilds brought up in the chat too, same 40 as Terrion Arnold. And you look at the fastest 40s of all time for corners. I'll go through them. Number 1, tied for first, Kalen Barnes, 4.23. Tied for first with him, DJ Turner the second, 4.23. And I like DJ Turner.
Not out.
But Tariq Woolen, 4.26, was third. Stanford Route 4.27 out of Houston.
Could you look up what Xavier Rhodes' 40 time was? Because I don't think he ran a fast 40, and that man was fucking.
Well, Stanford was 4. He ran a 4.27, and then tied for 5th was Champ Bailey. Champ Bailey was pretty good. 4.28. What about Jalen Myrick?
Keep going.
4.28. DeMarcus Van Dyke, 4.28. So, I mean, again, 40 time does not transfer over you being a great corner. Xavier Rhodes ran a 4.43.
Yeah,
So,
and to this point too, in Klotz, I'm with you on that because remember, like it's like Carlton Davis, it's known, like even people in Tampa who they got rid of him, they all will admit, like now that he's gone, hey, when he's at his best, he could be a top 10 corner in the league. If Terrion ends up working out by the end of the year, you just might end up with one of the best corner duos in the NFL going into the playoffs.
And then think about who's behind him.
That doesn't hurt.
Right.
Think about who's behind him. You got 3 and 4 ready to go.
And then with that, like your secondary, this was the question. I don't know, Klotz, if we did this on Thursday, Friday when you're out, but I think I asked a question like, can this Detroit Lions secondary be a top 10 secondary by the end of the season? And we did that rank. I think you actually might have been here because they were ranked 11th in the ESPN or the 33rd team. Like when you really think about it in those terms, how good Carlton is and how good Terrion can be. And then you're like, hey, guess what? Now we have Brian Branch still in the nickel. We have Iffy and Kirby. We still have Amik Robertson. We're like, dude, there's no way. Like if Terrion ends up working out, this secondary could be one of the best in the league. Like this corner duo.
When they put out the nickel package and they have Terrion, Carlton Davis, Iffy, Kirby, and then Brian Branch at nickel, that's, in my opinion, at least on paper, that's a top 10 secondary in the NFL.